We appreciate Buck Martinez joining us. Good morning, Mr. Martinez.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
We're doing well. Still trying to figure out exactly where that CC Sabathia came from last night. Now, I know that there have been glimpses of that, and he pitches well in New York, and he appears to like the postseason. But, Buck, I saw 93 a couple of times from CC Sabathia, and I saw him elevating fastballs to guys who feast on elevating fastballs. That was a craftsman's performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was. And you know what about CC? And you mentioned it. He's got pedigree, and he's pitched in these great games before. We all remember what he did when he went to Milwaukee after the trade from Cleveland, and then he stepped up his game in New York. But these veteran star players, they love that atmosphere. And you saw his record after a Yankee loss. So he's now 10-0 after a Yankee loss. So he's a pretty special pitcher that has the ability to reach back for a little extra. I mean, he might not do it every 5 days, but certainly in this postseason atmosphere, he's capable of doing that.
This has been already, however it ends, Buck, a remarkable and surprising postseason, though, for the Yankees. You think about it. They started out in a winner-take-all game, putting their best starting pitcher out there, and he lasted a third of an inning. And here we are. Here we are in the ALCS with them very much in it, having already knocked off Cleveland, obviously having come back and won that wild card game after Severino blew up. I think a lot of us were thinking, well, 2 years from now the Yankees are going to be a monster, but they might wind up in the World Series here.
Yeah, they sure might, Stephen. And you mentioned Sabathia, but let's don't forget about Tanaka.
Yep.
And what he has done. And Tanaka, with that 15 strikeout game against the Blue Jays, I spoke to Shinjo Hori, who's the interpreter for Tanaka after the game, and Shinjo and I worked together in Japan, so I know him very well. And I said, what did he do differently, and why has he all of a sudden turned things around? He said he simplified things. He went to fastball, splitter, and slider, and he eliminated all those other pitches. And, in that regard, it reminds me of Kelvin Escobar. And Escobar had so many pitches, but he didn't really master any of them. And now with Tanaka focused on 3 pitches, I think with CC and Tanaka and Severino bouncing back, they certainly have a chance to go to the World Series.
How does he you're right. He's the guy because Tanaka has, 6 pitches, something like that? Like a lot of Japanese pitchers do, right? They have that kind of a repertoire, especially, a lot of different kind of breaking pitches. But how does it happen that is that his decision? Is that him and a catcher's decision? Is it him and a pitching coach's decision? How does he decide to shorten his repertoire, Buck?
I think Larry Rothschild has a lot to do with it. I think Larry is such a great pitching coach, and he's such a laid-back guy. He's been a manager, he's been a pitching coach, he's pitched himself, and he understands that simple is much better because and just think about it. If you try to do 6 different things, I don't care what you're trying to do, any 6 different tasks, you're not going to do them well. But when you narrow it down to 3, that's pretty specific. And those 3 pitches in particular are all thrown the same fashion. They all come out of the same arm angle. They all thrown with the same arm speed. So he can really perfect those 3 pitches, and his command has been impeccable. And I think he, like CC, is capable of doing that through the rest of the postseason. And then you've got the electric Severino, who had a hiccup in that first game, as you mentioned, but his stuff is special. And now I think things have calmed down a little bit for the Yankees after losing 2 in Houston. That now they understand who they are. And as you mentioned, we expected this team to be good next year and really good in 2 years, but now they're ahead of schedule. And I think a lot of it has to do with the impact that Aaron Hicks has had, with the impact of Matt Holliday and Joe Girardi himself by not panicking during any of these tough spots. They all stay pretty even-keeled.
I'm glad you mentioned Joe Girardi because I take a lot of grief. I mean, I've had manager of the year votes in the city. I didn't have it this year, but I've had 3 in a row. I always vote. I generally put Joe Girardi in there because I just think he's horribly underappreciated, frankly, by people in New York, but baseball in general. I look at this guy and the stuff that he has to manage, and he's got different issues than Joe Torre had when he was in New York. But by and large, the team's competitive. It's competitive. He's had older guys who haven't had great years. He's been competitive with them. He's managed through the decline of CC Sabathia's career. He's managed through the loss of Mariano Rivera. I mean, Buck, I don't think people give this guy enough credit. I really don't.
No, I agree with you 100%. Joe's, in his 10th year managing the Yankees. And, he won the first year he came and hasn't won since. But when you think about all the fires he has put out, even the ability to laugh at himself over the non-challenge issue in Cleveland, to come back and say, I'm not going to do that again. And last night, Headley forced him into that challenge, and I don't know what Chase was thinking about because it didn't come close to hitting him.
Mm-hmm.
But he was adamant that that ball hit him. But Joe deserves a lot of credit because he's managing rookies with Judge and Sanchez. He's managing prime players like Castro and Gregorius.
Yep.
And he's got veteran players on the declining side of their career. I think he's done a terrific job with this team. And remember, he benched Gary Sanchez in the middle of the season because he wasn't catching well.
Yep.
And, that's a bold move by a manager, but he did it. And, Ken Sanchez is catching a little bit better, but that's another discussion about this whole postseason catching issue. It's been horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Joe does deserve a lot of credit. He's done a heck of a job with this Yankee ball club.